Hey folks, this is Kelani. As we were finishing up the Warlock class changes videos, we were talking about which class to hit next. We couldn't quite decide which class to play around with, which class looks cool, which class has some awesome changes, and then the dev team decided it was time for the Boomkin changes to hit beta servers, so guess what class we're doing next? That's right, Warrior. Alright, okay, I lied. We're going to be looking over Druids. This video will focus on the new Boomkin changes because Boomkin has been in a bit of a sorry state since the beta opened. With the loss of their artifact weapons and legendaries, the spec just didn't really function properly, and with nothing to fill in the huge gaps left behind, it really didn't feel all that great to play a balanced Druid. Well, it looks like the band-aids are being ripped off and some actual treatment is taking place because balanced Druids are receiving some hefty upgrades. Let's see what's in store for our favourite fluffy feathered friends. Balanced Druids use Astral Power, which is a fairly standard resource in that some abilities will generate Astral Power while your most powerful spells will consume it. So you throw out the lesser spells, pull a bunch of Starlight and then unleash devastating attacks on your foes, all while looking like an overstuffed chicken. The first two abilities are damage over time effects. We have Moonfire, which deals a little bit of upfront damage and a larger portion of damage over 22 seconds. Using Moonfire will generate 3 Astral Power. There's also Sunfire, which does more or less the same thing, a little bit of damage upfront with a long damage over time effect. Sunfire lasts for 18 seconds, but also hits all enemies within 8 yards of your target. Casting Sunfire will also generate 3 Astral Power. The next two abilities are more standard spells. They have a cast time and deal upfront damage instead of just damage over time. We have Solar Wrath, a 1.3 second cast time which deals nature damage to your target and generates 8 Astral Power. We also have Lunar Strike, which is a 1.9 second cast time, so quite a bit longer than Wrath, and deals arcane damage to your target as well as a lesser amount of damage to every enemy within 8 yards of your target. Lunar Strike generates 12 Astral Power. You'll typically be chain casting Solar Wrath on single target due to its lower cast time, and using Lunar Wrath in AoE situations due to the cleave. It's not quite as simple as that though, so we'll touch on that in a little bit. Our main Astral Power spending ability is Star Surge, which costs 40 Astral Power and deals a large amount of damage to your target and also grants you Lunar and Solar Empowerment. These empowerments are what the entire spec revolves around. I'll go into detail on these shortly. If you want to deal more AoE damage instead of single target, you can also spend Astral Power on Starfall. Starfall costs 50 Astral Power and is a targeted AoE which rains stars on all enemies within the area of effect. It also applies Stellar Empowerment to all targets hit, which increases the damage they take from your Moonfire and Sunfire damage over time effects. Our last ability is our only baseline cooldown, Celestial Alignment. This is a 3-minute cooldown which increases the damage of all your spells by 20% and grants you 15% haste for 20 seconds. That's a pretty strong cooldown for a caster. Haste is going to be amazing for a lot of classes, and who would ever say no to a 20% damage increase? That's all of our main damaging abilities. Let's see how our passives link everything together. Let's start with Empowerment, because the entire spec really does revolve around this one passive effect. So we have Lunar Empowerment and Solar Empowerment. Lunar Empowerment increases the damage of your next Lunar Strike and reduces its cast time by 15%. Solar Empowerment causes your next Solar Wrath to explode for additional damage, which hits all nearby enemies and reduces its cast time by 15%. So that's one of the huge changes. The 15% increased cast speed was a talent, and now it's just rolled into the Empowerment's passive to give you a little bit of extra oomph whenever those empowerments proc. You can have up to 3 stacks of each type of empowerment at any one time, and remember Star Surge gives you 1 stack of both Lunar and Solar Empowerment, so use them wisely. That's not the only source of empowerments anymore though. There's a new passive called Eclipse. Lunar Strike has a 20% chance to grant you Solar Empowerment, and Solar Wrath has a 20% chance to grant you Lunar Empowerment. So just by casting your two abilities, you have a chance to proc more empowerments. As you weave back and forth between them, you'll proc more empowerments, deal more damage and generate more Astral Power faster. It's a bit of a snowball and it feels fantastic when you get a long chain of empowerments going. The change to Solar Empowerment also means that when you're in an AoE encounter, spamming your Lunar Strikes, hitting Solar Wrath when empowerment procs is still going to be worth it with that added AoE bonus. Balanced Druid's Mastery also plays into the whole empowerment game. Mastery increases the damage of Star Surge and Star Fall, both of our astral power spending abilities, as well as boosting the damage effects of both lunar empowerment and solar empowerment. So all around Mastery is shaping up to be a hefty damage increase. There's another passive called Astral Influence as well, which increases the range of all your spells by 5 yards, giving you a baseline 45-yard range instead of the usual 40. Quite significant changes already, and we haven't even touched the talents yet. Let's bash through the utility spells we have access to first, and then we'll move on to talents. We still have Rebirth for the moments where your tank goes down and you still need to use his fat butt as a meat shield. We also still have Bark Skin, a 20% damage reduction cooldown which prevents spellcasting delays on a 1-minute cooldown. Your healers will love you for the next one because we still have Innovate. Infuse a friendly healer with energy, allowing them to cast spells without spending any mana for 10 seconds on a 3-minute cooldown. We're still rocking Solar Beam too, a small AoE silence which can cover quite a lot of monsters if you're smart about it. And then there's a whole bunch of other utility spells like Entangling Roots, Remove Curse, Soothe and Hibernate. Quite a few options for crowd control or simple utility. Very nice. The only movement cooldown we have in our baseline kit is Dash, which activates your cat form and increases your movement speed by 60% for 10 seconds. Let's move on to the talents because I know you're just itching to see what else has changed for Balanced Druids. On the first row we have Nature's Balance. While in combat you generate 2 astral power every 3 seconds, and while out of combat you automatically rebalance yourself to 50 astral power instead of 0, giving you an extra boost on your opening attacks. That could end up being very strong. Not only do you generate astral power faster, so you can crank out those empowered spells faster, but you start off with enough astral power to open up with Star Surge or Starfall right out of the gate. We also have Warrior of Elune. Your next 3 lunar strikes are instant cast and generate 40% additional astral power. Seems like that could be very good for AoE situations. Deal a bunch of damage with lunar strikes and several quick star falls after. The last talent on this row is Force of Nature. Summon up 3 treants which will taunt and attack your enemies for 10 seconds. You also generate 15 astral power over 10 seconds, and that's on a 1-minute cooldown. Probably fairly decent for soloing and leveling, not so sure how that will shape up in endgame content. We also have Tiger Dash. This replaced Displacer Beast as a high movement cooldown option, but doesn't quite scratch the same itch. Tiger Dash increases your movement speed by 200%, which decays over 4 seconds. This also replaces Dash, so you kind of have to pick and choose, a slower 10-second movement speed bonus or a faster 4-second movement speed bonus. On the upside, Tiger Dash only has a 45-second cooldown instead of 2 minutes, so it's all going to be a balancing act. There's also Renewal, which instantly heals you for 30% of your max health on a 1.5 minute cooldown. The other movement talent we have is Wild Charge, which does a whole bunch of different things depending on what form you're currently in. You can hop to a friendly ally or even use it as a disengage. The next row deals with affinities, which are pretty much the same as they are in Legion. Feral Affinity increases your movement speed by 15% and gives you a few more cat spells. Guardian Affinity reduces all damage you take by 6% and gives you some more bear abilities. And Restoration Affinity heals you for 3% of your max health every 5 seconds. And if you're at full health, an injured party or raid member will be healed instead. You also pick up a few more resto abilities. Next up is Mighty Bash, a single target stun which lasts for 5 seconds and has a 50-second cooldown. We also have Mass Entanglement, roots the target and all enemies within 15 yards for 30 seconds, and then we have Typhoon, a fairly straightforward knockback which can either be incredibly useful or will just irritate your tanks. Your mileage may vary. Soul of the Forest increases the damage bonuses of both lunar and solar empowerments by 30% and decreases the astral power cost of Starfall by 10, so you can put even more cards into your empowerment deck to really go crazy with it. Or we have a new talent, Twin Moons. Moonfire deals 20% increased damage and also hits another nearby enemy within 20 yards of the target, so you can start to double up on your Moonfires again. Then there's Incarnation Chosen of Elune, an improved Moonkin form which basically just means you're wearing a bit of armor for once, but you also get a 25% bonus to all of your spells and 15% haste. This talent actually replaces Celestial Alignment, so you don't get 2 cooldowns, you just get 5% added onto the spell damage portion and it lasts for 10 seconds longer. Down a row we have another new talent, or rather a changed talent, Starlord. Star Surge and Starfall grant you 3% haste for 15 seconds. This can stack up to 3 times, but gaining a stack won't refresh the duration, so you can use the haste bit by bit or all at once. I guess numbers will decide which way to play will be preferable. We also have Stellar Drift, which increases Starfall's radius by 30%, increases its damage by 25%, and whenever you stand in Starfall's effect you can cast while moving. Not a new talent, but still so awesome. Stellar Flare is another damage over time effect. This one has a short cast time and costs 10 astral power, but it does burn for quite a lot of damage over 24 seconds. On our last row we have Shooting Stars. Moonfire and Sunfire damage over time has a 10% chance to call down a falling star, dealing damage and generating 2 astral power. Fury of Elune calls down a beam of pure celestial energy which follows your target like a creepy death ray and deals a lot of damage over 8 seconds while generating 40 astral power over its duration. Then we have our final talent, the long lost new moon. Seeing this as a talent probably makes a lot of balanced druids cry for a variety of reasons. Oh my gosh, we still have moons, but what the hell is it doing as a talent? So many mixed emotions. So new moon works in the same way. It has 3 charges and a long recharge time. New moon turns into half moon, which turns into full moon. The cast time increases, the damage increases, and the astral power generation increases. I feel like this is either going to be your go-to choice or not going to be your choice at all. There doesn't seem to be much room for a middle ground here, but maybe everything will end up being balanced just perfectly. We can hope. Before these changes, Boomkin didn't feel all that amazing to play. You had few procs, which didn't really feel all too special unless you heavily talented into improving your empowerments, which made other areas of the spec feel a bit lacking. With so much power behind the solar and lunar empowerments in your baseline kit, and having new ways to generate the empowerments themselves, creates a flexible rotation where you always want to fire off an empowered spell. It actually feels really nice to play now. It might be my favourite caster spec. The only exception would possibly be Demonology Warlock, but I would say these two specs work in sufficiently different ways that I wouldn't pit them against each other. Certainly for an upfront damage caster, Balanced Druid is incredibly fun and smooth. If you are worried at all about playing Balance going into Battle for Azeroth, I would say don't fret. If you're having fun with Balance right now in Legion, then you're going to have a blast with BFA Balance, even without your artifact weapon. These changes are actually a bit of a problem for me. I thought I had decided what I was going to play. The main reason I wasn't all too interested in Druids was the problems with Balance. My main preference is definitely a ranged DPS spec, but I enjoy having the other roles as options. With the ranged DPS spec of Druids being a little sad and their tanking spec being fairly boring in my opinion, I had safely stowed my Druid away on a shelf. Balance doesn't have any of those problems anymore. It's in fantastic shape from what I've played on beta. I might have to reach up onto that shelf and bring down my poor Druid. But that's it for the Balanced Druid changes going into Battle for Azeroth. Has this saved you from a terrible fate of swapping mains? Are you thinking about maining a Balanced Druid in Battle for Azeroth after seeing these changes? Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. A massive thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. We just hit our first milestone. If you want to check out what that means, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.